Good afternoon and welcome back to day 2 of the International Vocal Competition Lied Duo here in s-Hertogenbosch. Today I have the chance to talk to commissioned artist and winner of the open call in the cooperation between the IVC and the St. Joost School of Art and Design as he gives us a sneak peek into his process behind his art. Then I get the chance to talk to jury member tenor Howard Haskin as he tells us what he's looking for in the participants of this year's competition. I am here in the Statuszaal with Benjamin Schoones, who is the winner of the first open call that the IVC had in cooperation with the St. Joost School of Art and Design. He was commissioned to create a work that will be on display here in the Statuszaal and the Verkadefabriek for the entirety of the competition. Benjamin, thank you so much for being here with us today. How is it to see your work here finally in the Statuszaal, in the place where you imagined it being displayed? How do you feel?
I feel quite excited about it because you never really know how to expect how it's going to be in such a zaal as this one. So yeah, it's quite quite interesting to see. Yeah.
Yeah, and now you can imagine how the singers will also experience it in the room. You have a technique that you use to create all these things a little bit in the same way that singers and pianists have technique to play and sing. Can you tell us a little bit how your work comes to life?
It's quite I don't know how to describe it. It's a quite fluid process, I guess, and it's quite in a natural way how you work the clay. It's the same how you treat a song or sing, I guess, or work your way to music when you start with a fundamental piece and work your way out to something which becomes a new form.
And how do you treat the clay? What does that look like?
It's quite a demanding process sometimes. Like the clay can be very rough, and sometimes it doesn't really wants to do what you expect, what you want it to do, and it's quite unpredictable. It's quite an unpredictable medium in a sense that you can never really know what to expect from it, which makes it so much fun. But in the meantime, you get the medium a bit more and more, and but then still, it's always unpredictable.
So there's lots of layers to the work. How do you go about doing that? Is there a specific way of treating it, or all these different colors and things? How do you bring that out of the clay?
I think I work with like 3 different things, like different colors of clay. So those are 2 different things, and pigments. And the pigments are, sometimes I can mix them into the clay and they get a more subtle touch to it, but also like the more darker colors, they stand more out. And then you can work your way with pigment also just on the surface, and like spread it over the sculpture and then put it in the oven. So you always have like so like then the color gets like a much more like a clear surface on what's happening, and yeah, gets it. That's it.
Super interesting. How do you expect this to inspire the singers on stage? Do you have a hope that it will bring something to them or to the audience?
That's always something. Like for me, when I create an object, it always like gets its own life or like its own feeling. So I hope, in a sense, that it does the same to the singers, or maybe it can coexist on the stage.
Yeah, absolutely. And you drew inspiration from Donizetti's song "Amore e Morte," and that is also the name of the piece, right?
Yes.
How did that piece inspire you while you were working, or before you started working to think of it? How did that influence the work?
I think there's like a certain duality in the song, but also like something that they can coexist, or like work with each other, like the feeling of losing someone, but also like getting stronger from that feeling is like such a place where friction gets created, and I feel like I always feel that in my sculptures or things as well, or with objects, or when I place them somewhere, there's always like a harmony or like a consonance or dissonance happening, and that's always what I find like a very important aspect into my work. And I felt that was happening in that piece as well. So I felt like it would be like very fitting for my own practice, but also for the competition, and to contribute with that lead.
Yeah, beautiful. What do you see as friction in these pieces? Of course, I see, for myself, I see some friction, but what would you call friction?
The friction is more like the materials, or like when there's always sometimes like a captured moment when there is a movement, and sometimes it can be like for the nerves or something, like there is like something which got pulled out, or like it's pushed into a certain form, and that gets internalized by like putting it into the oven, and you really cannot do much about it anymore. So that's also for me like the friction. When it's done, and you cannot really do much about it anymore.
Yeah, exactly. When you're performing, it's done, and you just gotta let it go. You gotta let it go. Absolutely. Amore e Morte is on display through November 21st until the end of the competition. The piece is also for sale, and for more information, you can look on the website ivc.nu. I previously also visited Benjamin in his atelier in Breda, where these works came to life. Take a look.
So when I first start off, I start to get the clay and mix it together, so you get sort of a marbling structure. And I keep on folding it into different slabs and roll it out continuously until it gets to a certain pattern. And then you keep on working the clay in the sense that it becomes a bit more hard in a sense, because of course clay is moist. Eventually put it in the oven, it will also shrink like for 1 centimeter. And then like when in the meantime when I'm doing that, I started to weld the frames as well. It's also to get the idea of the format of the sculpture. I could like anticipate it into it and make it a bit bigger or smaller, so it really fits more into the narrative of the sculpture as well. So it really needs to work together. And once it gets out, you never really expect what's to happen, and you can also like change it a little bit. So of course the clay is into a solid form, but then when it's out of the oven, you don't really have to be afraid anymore that it really breaks that quickly. And then sometimes you figure out that some pieces are different than you expected. So the original position of this sculpture was initially different. Can like demonstrate it, like the piece is now built out of 2 pieces, and since they let loose into the oven, I could put them into a different position, which I felt more interesting in a sense that it has a bit more of a different flow or a different position that it is before. And it's the same one with this one as well, when I just put the sculpture into a different position, because I felt like it has more a dynamic position in a sense. It feels more active than it just lays down. You can defy gravity in a sense, or have the sculpture stand more on its own, or like taking it into a new position that you didn't think of before.
After getting a glimpse into the process of commissioned artist Benjamin Schoones, I am now here to talk with jury member tenor Howard Haskin, whose reputation precedes him by a mile, with a plethora of opera roles under his belt and song recitals across the globe. He is returning to serve as a panelist after participating in the 28th edition of the International Vocal Competition. Thank you so much for being here with us today, Howard. It's wonderful to have you.
My pleasure.
Tell me, you won first prize at the 28th edition of this competition. Can you draw on your experience waiting backstage, waiting to go on stage, and does that influence you at all when you're judging the participants?
I do remember, but I have to tell you that before I had come to do the competition, I had already sung on stage in quite a few different places. In fact, in doing my studies in America, I went to Indiana University, where I was actually singing on stage quite often, because we had at the time a system where they did 6 grand operas there every year, plus complete with orchestra and all. And all of that to say that by the time I'd come to do the competition, basically I was just simply going out to do another performance. Mm-hmm. So it wasn't a question of being nervous or upset or what have you. Plus, I had already won a competition in Paris beforehand. So it was just business as usual.
It was business as usual.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah.
And you're known for your versatility, your language, your mastery of languages. And I'm wondering if versatility is something that you're looking for in the participants.
Yes. One of the things that I did also before coming here was I was in Zurich, and I was part of the opera studio and then part of the opera company, which meant that we had to do language, we had to have the language of the opera that we were singing in, because you would change from French to German to Italian at the drop of a hat. And that was great experience for me, because it made me learn all of these various languages, not just simply have a slight idea, but I had to actually speak them and sing them. So what I'm looking for when these kids come out today is that they have enough of a mastery of the language, not necessarily so that I just simply understand the words, but I understand the idea behind the words. That's what makes life more interesting.
Important difference.
Yeah.
Important difference.
The thing for a lot of performers in general is they don't like to concentrate on communicating. It's one of the hazards of today's world with all of its technology, is that we're very good at being able to get in touch with each other, but we rarely actually communicate with each other, actually speak to each other, talk to each other, love each other. It's a tiny little thing, but it makes a big difference.
Very interesting. So as someone with obviously both extensive opera experience and song recital, is there something about Lied, the International Vocal Competition Lied Duo we're here for today, is there something specific about Lied that you maybe miss in opera, or that is special about it that you think you want to hold on to?
I'm the fish out of water, in that I believe, and I've often believed, that no matter what it is that you're singing, you want to, again, communicate. Lieder singing, melody, it doesn't matter what it is. I look at them as mini operas, tiny operas. They all have an introduction, they have a development, and then they have an end. Now, it happens in 2 pages, 3 pages, 15 pages sometimes, but the idea is to communicate an entire scenario, an entire world that can happen in just a few short moments. And when you can do that, all of a sudden you open up the leader to something that is a lot more than just simply very nice pearl tones with someone being very, very lovely, et cetera, et cetera. I've always been known as a rather gregarious type of singer, because I do things demonstratively. I use my hands, I use my facial expressions. Some people don't like that because they think it's a bit too gauche and too out there, but it's something that I learned when I was in church 100 gazillion years ago, playing piano and organ, because I started playing when I was 3 years old. So in our church, it was a question that when you were singing, you sang. You didn't just sort of mumble. And learning that from 3 is something that I've carried on all these years.
You just have it with you the whole time.
Absolutely.
Well, that was already amazing advice, but do you have any last words of wisdom or advice for the participants this week, or the singers going into a competition somewhere?
Have fun. Have fun. Why have fun? Because as serious as this business is, and yes, you've got to have done your homework, made sure that you did all the things you were supposed to do, but still have fun, because if you are communicating that flow of energy, that is a flow that is constantly in movement, then you are able to move people in the audience. Not everyone's going to be moved, but some people will, simply because of the fact that you're not stodgy, sitting, not moving. Keep the music moving. Have fun.
I think that says it all. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for your time.
My great pleasure.
And don't forget to join us tonight at 8:15 for a recital by IVC laureate soprano Harriet Burns and pianist Ian Tyndale with their recital A Mother's Garland, exclusively British and American composers. You don't want to miss it.